Hi everybody, this is Cora Stack again here, Dr. Stack. I've been thinking about that judgment. Is this what lawyers do all the time? Because I think it's extremely important, and I'm going to. I've read some of the history of of the judgments and the career of the Chief Justice, Mr. Hamilton, and it is actually quite impressive. But I think this I wondered, would he have ever thought that this was one that he wouldn't have been proud of? And I think just looking at it, I think. It was a missed opportunity. So I was thinking about it now, reading all the pros and cons and looking at the history, and obviously he did very well and everything else like that. Kennedy, but no, they survived. But I think what didn't survive was the freedom of the press. So the missed opportunity, how the state versus Kennedy and Arnold case failed Ireland's press freedom. So this is how I've been thinking about this now for the past several hours, and this is where I'm coming down on this here in terms of fairness. I'm judging this. Someone said I'd make a brilliant judge, so because I look at all sides and then I think about it, and so this is my judgment on this. So in the 1980s, two of Ireland's most respected journalists, Geraldine Kennedy and Bruce Arnold, discovered that their telephones had been illegally tapped. In other words, they were under surveillance by order of then Minister for Justice Sean Doherty. This wasn't a conspiracy theory. It was state surveillance, ordered at the highest level of government, targeting journalists whose only crime was holding power to account. There was telling truth to power. The scandal shook Ireland. It raised profound questions about freedom of the press, privacy, and abuse of political power. Kennedy and Arnold courageously took the state to court, and they, inverted commas, won. The High Court ruled that their constitutional rights had been violated, but the damages awarded were modest, in fact shockingly low, considered the gravity of what had occurred. But it isn't so much that, it's this. The presiding judge, Mr. Justice Liam Hamilton, was widely respected. He had a long record of sound judgment. This is what I've read this, deep integrity, and later served with great distinction as Chief Justice. But in this particular case, this is my opinion now, his monetary award was poor judgment. Not in law, but in impact. Because that award, small as it was, failed to send the message that needed to be sent, that no government or any powerful body, powerful bodies that would be able to engage in surveillance activities should ever dare to intimidate, silence or surveil the press again, or anybody else that would be like the press. Indeed, the signal it sent was this: you can breach fundamental democratic rights and pay a small price, a missed opportunity that echoed far beyond the courtroom. So this is my now judgment of the Chief Justice's, worst, I would say, by looking at his record, worst judgment, but it had a huge impact. So today, decades later, the Irish press finds itself in a different kind of fear. Fear of state backlash, fear of funding cuts, fear of exclusion, fear of silence. The culture of surveillance and intimidation may not look the same, but the effects are eerily similar. Journalists tread carefully, editors weigh risks, and many stories, especially about corruption, collusion and cronyism, are left untold. The case of Kennedy in Ireland should have been a turning point, a declaration that Ireland values truth, accountability and the courage to question power. Instead, the low damages set a precedent of leniency, not deterrence. This is my judgment. I'm judging now the Chief Justice. So I think I'm I'm an excellent judge, inverted commas. So a signal that state overreach could go largely unpunished, that press freedom could be violated without meaningful consequence. Across Europe, courts have repeatedly affirmed that freedom of expression is the cornerstone of democracy, and that violations must be met with strong remedies, not token sums. Cases like Goodwin versus the United Kingdom 1996 and Observer and Guardian versus United Kingdom 1991 set that standard. Ireland, missed that mark. I mean, it's unbelievable. Justice Hamilton's words were wise, his record was extraordinary, but the remedy fell short. And when the law falls to protect the press cannot protect democracy. That's the bottom line. If Ireland is serious about transparency, accountability and democratic integrity, then future judgment must do more than acknowledge wrongdoing. They must deter it. Because freedom of the press is not self-sustaining. It survives only when the state fears to silence it. Democracy dies in silence, and silence begins when the press is afraid to speak. And this is very evident to me going around, the various places. It's very evident that the press are terrified, So, we're very, this was pretty evident to me. So I'm just putting it there now in terms of that judgment, by a very distinguished judge. It was very poor in terms of its impact and in terms of its message, because the awards were so low. So that brilliant judge, that to me would be something that would be a long-lasting legacy of, so one major bad judgment can really have a detrimental effect on democracy. Perhaps he had a brilliant career, but the impact of that particular judgment, given the minuscule damages that he awarded in that case, really was a major failing and a missed opportunity by Justice Hamilton. And it's very regrettable. And I've been thinking about it now for a number of hours and looking at his research profile and his judicial profile, and it's a very strong record. That one certainly let the whole lot of the rest of them down hugely. So I'd hope that going forward judges would listen to what the impact of this judgment in terms of the monetary compensation was derisory in the extreme. It wasn't so much to those people, but it is the message that it sent, a very lenient message for any kind of surveillance of any kind of citizen, who is exposing wrongdoing or corruption, or anybody that is under surveillance for any kind of to stop them from exposing any kind of collusion or corruption or wrongdoing. That message sent a very poor signal that anyone that they can get away with doing it and avoid any kind of any kind of punitive any kind of issues that would, in other words, it was not a deterrent. And certainly of all the judgments I've read, and he comes across as very impressive. Now, the other thing I was trying to check was he responsible for the removal of Mr. Ed Houlihan from the courts, from the masters? Did he take away a lot of his responsibilities? Now, I don't know. One of the Chief Justices did take a lot of Mr. Ed Houlihan's responsibilities away from him because they felt he was too lenient towards the lay litigant who had no money to defend themselves against the banks. And I don't know, was it Hamilton or not, so I'll have to check that out. But that would be another major issue there, I think, against ordinary people. And today's paper, Minister O'Donoghue isn't given any tax breaks to the squeeze middle, I believe, Pascal O'Donoghue, and I think that the squeeze middle are paying for corruption. That's what I'm saying now, that we're getting no money because we are paying for the corruption. And people everywhere are talking to me about it. I never heard so many people in Ireland talking about the terrible corruption that's in the country. I have never come across it in my life. Every second person is now opening up and talking about how terrible Ireland is for corruption. It is shocking in the extreme. And there I am, and I'm actually trying to take it all in, and completely and utterly shocked at how many ordinary people are absolutely appalled at the level of corruption. And the only people that can stop it now are the Irish judiciary.